Hello again, welcome to Iford. So we're going to do some pricking out today. I think last time we were together I did some seed sowing. So today we'll do pricking out. And I suppose the first thing to say, it's a bit hot in here actually. So what time are we? It's about 3 o'clock and it's probably the wrong time to be doing a job like this. Not just for yourself, but actually it's too hot for the plants to be fiddling with roots and stuff and letting them dry out in this heat is far too warm. And just a little tip or a technique, what I've actually done here, you might be able to see that the floors here is still wet. I've actually what we call wetted down, so that's literally just using a hose pipe, not watering the plants but wetting the benches and wetting the floor. And it was nearly 30 degrees in here and I was able to lower the temperature by about 7 degrees just by wetting down, so that's something really useful to do. So we're going to choose the seeds that we're going to prick out. They're over here. So these are all the things that we've been pricking out. It's actually not a lot here now. It's towards the end of May. We always like to get the greenhouse actually pretty empty by the next few weeks, ready for the next phase of seed sowing, which would be biennials. Then after that hardy annuals in September. So just a few things left in here. These are the things that I pricked out about a week ago. We've got breezer here, this lovely grass and some lychnis. You can just see just the roots starting to show through. So we had about a week pricked out and they looked like this just a week ago. So it's amazing once you've moved them on from the seed compost into potting compost, they really do start to grow quite quickly. So we'll do, I think, these. This is another lychnis, lychnis coronaria, a magenta one. They're a little bit small for pricking out really, but probably better small than large. So we'll take these to the bench and we'll start pricking them out. So it's not a mystery really, the sequencing and the pricking out, but there's something to understand, and I suppose it's quite easy to look at these pots and just to help. So this is what we call a seed pan. And the only difference between this and perhaps a normal plant pot is it's quite shallow. And this is because when you're sowing a seed you don't need a lot of depth of soil there. So a seed pan, literally a shallow pot. So I sow all of my seeds in these pans rather than like some people would into a seed tray. You can see again shallow, ideal for seeds. The reason I don't really sow seeds in these is because I don't want that many, and you either end up with far too many seedlings or you only sow a little bit of this and then the other bit's kind of wasted. So they are fine if you're sowing a lot of something. I prefer to stick with a pot, one of these pans. So from here you would then prick out into probably a plug tray. Now these are all different sizes and it really depends on the kind of plant you're growing as to what size you might actually decide to use. What I'd like is really just to have two sizes, and then there's some regularity, there's some consistency to the working method. You don't have to rethink it all every time. So they're our two sizes. Then from the plug tray you then move into this sort of size. This is what we call the 8 centimetre. Quite often you might use a 9 centimetre, which is the most more common. And then next size up, next size up, next size up. And you don't have to go through that sequence. You can choose to miss any one of those out if you wanted to, or stop, and then you might decide to plant from that size. So that's the kind of the sequence there. So with these lychnis I'm going to prick them out into one of these plug trays. This is peat-free potting compost. So you fill your plug tray up, tap it down, just firm those cells a little bit and wipe off. You might well need a little bit surplus compost just to dress around the seedlings once you've pricked them in. So it's fine if you've got a little bit of a pile on here, because you will sort of use it or use this around. So two options with pricking out really. You can tease each one out individually and just literally getting your little dibber in in doing this, and you sort of tease maybe one or a little cluster out, and then usually use a pencil rather than a pen, but anyway, make a little hole, put it in, and then just firm back around it. But the key thing is not to touch the roots or the stem. These are so fragile, so you're literally picking it up by the leaf and trying also to get those roots in, and also not to sort of push against the stem when you're firming it. So that method of teasing out is quite useful if you're only going to, say, use half of these and you want the other half to remain in this pan and just grow on a little bit, and in case you get some failure, which is quite normal, then you can prick out the others. But the other way that you can do it, and it's probably the way I do more often, is to actually just knock out the whole pot like this, because I just find it easier, and then you can just kind of just pull apart those. I just think there's kind of less risk to damaging the stems really and the roots, if you're not kind of trying to pull them out of the pot. You might have noticed I'm started from the back left there. It's because I'm right-handed, and if you start here, you just kind of get in the way, so it's much easier to start here and work down the rows like this, and you're not kind of trying to work on top of yourself in a way. So again, just the same thing. Once you've got them, dibble them in, firm them down, and you just keep on going. And once you've done the whole tray, obviously you would need to water, as you always do, and that would be with a rose overhead watering from a can, and then these would go back on the bench where we got the seed pan from, just for a few days, a week or so, in that same area. So what I would do now, if you were going to keep your spare seedlings and this, you would need to write another label out, because everything needs to have a label. It's very easy just to start to, when you're doing a lot, start to forget what's what, the date, when you sowed them, when you pricked them out, etc. And also write it in the propagation book. And what I'll do is I'll just put these back in here, so you can see they can go back in there and on the bench, and they'll be fine growing on for a week or two in case you need them. If we don't use them, it's also quite nice perhaps to give them to garden volunteers. So okay, let's go out and have a look at the ones that we did about 3 weeks ago. So here we are in what we call our standing out area, literally just a sand bed. Things really like to root through and into the sand, so it's really useful medium to have underneath. Often people use that black kind of what we call Mypex, which is fine. It keeps sort of weed seeds from germinating, but actually it doesn't pull the roots down as much as having a sand base does. So anyway, these are the things here that I only pricked out about 3 weeks ago, and you can see they're already getting into quite nice sized plants. You might wonder what I'm looking underneath for. I'm looking for roots. I mean, I wouldn't expect any on these, but from 3 weeks ago. But they're starting. Those roots are starting to be drawn down, and that plant will be ready to pop into the garden in about a week or two once I see those roots at the bottom. The only thing I would say just comes to mind is just be careful with the watering. You can see here it's a very sunny site, and there's just signs on this little fuchsia here, and that's nothing to worry about too much. But this is just scorch from watering in bright sunlight, and ideally you wouldn't want that leaf will die, and much better to water. Well, my preference is early morning. There's a different school of thoughts. Evening's good, but what I found, particularly here at Iford, there's quite a lot of stone walls, which are lovely, but they are home to a lot of slugs and snails particularly, and that evening watering then encourages all those snails to come out and enjoy that kind of environment through the evening, whereas in the morning it seems to be so much better because then it evaporates away any that's left, and we're not encouraging that cycle of snails to come out and enjoy feasting on the plants. So it's quite an important point really, and you have to ask yourself, why are you growing all of these plants? There has to be a reason. Don't just grow them for fun, because it all takes time and effort and real money. But these are the poppies that we saw up there, and the reason I grew these is one called Ladybird. It's quite short, maybe about, 30 centimetres or so. Bright red with black markings, hence Ladybird poppy. And I just think they'll look really nice, just dribbled through this self-sown oxeye daisy, and just having that combination of the two, I think will work really well. The oxeye daisies this year may be over before these have flowered, but at least we've had the idea, and actually these poppies might also sow next year with the daisies, and then we'll get that effect which we're looking for.
Well, if you've made it this far, thank you for watching, and I hope you'll subscribe to get more anecdotes, tips and tricks, behind the scenes tours and other news from Iford as we roll through the summer and into the winter months.